Hello, welcome back to the recap and practices for the journey to Shalom. This is chapter 4's recap. And chapter 4 is really a great continuation of chapter 3, chapter 3 being probably a pivotal chapter of the whole book, because in order to really understand IFS, we really have to understand. And I say understand, I don't mean intellectually, I mean experientially. We have to understand that concept of self. Self is really central to being able to have relationship and work the IFS model with the parts. So we mentioned last time of chapter 3 that the self is the imago Dei, the image of God, that was not removed, that was put in us by God at creation and was not removed by him after the fall and after the exile from the garden, as the story goes. And so we all bear that image, and in that image is restoration, right? Life, renewal. And so those are the 8 C's of self energy. And there are also some other aspects that we, from a psychology standpoint, have recognized. Oh, this is that aspect of, it's more than a part, so we don't call it a part, but this is the nature. It's playful, it's patient, it has perspective, in addition to all the 8 C's. And so as it got divided from the parts, the functional side of humanity, and exiled from the garden, those parts of us then became responsible for our survival, for figuring, life outside of the garden, how to make it last and how to navigate things. As the fall caused a division between God and humans, but also within the human, it created division between the parts and the self. And so the stories of wounding that shape us, what we see is just that division happening more and more. So as we face struggles and adversity in life, our parts begin to divide amongst each other. And there are factions, there are strategic ways that they divide and organize that tries to optimize survival in those adverse circumstances. And so how they divide according to IFS is that some parts will, when faced with adversity, will volunteer or be assigned by other parts to take on the pain of the situation. And then those parts get pushed or placed in a really remote section of the subconscious. And so they're really the pain holders. We call them the exiles because they live remotely in isolation so that the other parts don't have to deal with what they are dealing with because they don't know how. And the parts often are overwhelmed and don't know how to respond to the adversity. And so they just do the best that they can. And this is a pattern way that we find that parts will choose to survive is they'll divide up. And so also the division then is in protectors who protect by managing, by preventing and predicting, and other parts take on roles called firefighters, which are reactive, which power up or shut down the system. And managers and firefighters are different roles, but all protecting. Even exiles are protecting, but they're just doing it in different ways. And something to really keep in mind about, this continued division is that in division, there's loss of connection, there's loss of community. And so a firefighter part of you really may have no awareness of a manager part of you or an exile part of you, and certainly no awareness of you as self, because division, just promotes that perspective isolation. And this is what happens internally as much as we can also see it when it happens externally, in groups of people. And so these parts of us that are um, assigned, right, by the DNA to protect us, there is nothing they won't do to protect. They try to do as little as they can do, but the more adversity we face, the more overwhelm, the more traumatic experiences, the more they will do, the more extreme choices they'll make to try to reduce the amount of pain that the system is absorbing. Because there is a limited space, right? There is a limited capacity within our mind, body, and soul. Especially from a parts perspective, there's limited capacity. And so the journey to Shalom is really an invitation of reuniting the parts to the self. And when we do that, there is pretty quickly, pretty easily, a recognition, a responsiveness, a respect that parts have for self. Now, there are parts who learn to act like self, and they do a great job at that, and that can be useful at times, but that doesn't lead to the restoration that comes when I'm talking about parts reuniting with self. Because parts tend to not respect other parts, but they do have a respect for self, almost like they unconsciously remember that they belong with one another. And that's what IFS is about, is reuniting parts with self. The journey to Shalom then is an invitation of how our Christian spiritual practice is reuniting us to the Imago Dei and to the indwelling Spirit of God. And that comes relationally. It doesn't come through rejecting our humanity, villainizing, condemning our humanity. It comes through compassionate connection, relationship with the parts, reminding them very frequently that they already belong, that there is already the medicine that they're needing, and that there is a home inside that can support them in the work that they're doing externally. And so, exploring the impact of adversity, this is really the work that we are doing continuously, probably, lifelong, because these parts will organize and reorganize in a split second based on the outside stimulus. And so there's no possible way to find just one pattern that they're using. They certainly will use patterns repeatedly, but they can shift in more ways than we have enough paper to list it on. And so how we start to be able to cultivate relationships with these parts from within is we have to learn to become attuned and sensitive to the language of the internal world. This is something that we have when we're young, but our culture and environment tends to draw us away from it. And so I'm going to lead you in an exercise to practice becoming attuned to the internal world so that you can have some listening awareness abilities, because the internal world, as similar as it is to the external, it has some nuanced differences that we have to learn how to listen to, how to relate to. So let me invite you to find yourself where you are, and see if you can establish the next 3 minutes or so as a safe place. Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Is it relatively possible for you to remove yourself from any threats in the next 3 minutes? Because it's really hard for parts to do internal work when there's external stimulus going on. They have limited capacity. And so asking them to work in two places is really difficult for them to do. And however much you can establish a, a safe place right now, I'm going to invite you to notice the language, the communication of the internal world. It's not based on English, that's learned. The language of the internal world is natural, it's innate, inherent. And so it uses sensations from the body. It uses imagery, some familiar, some fantasy. The internal world communicates through feeling, emotion. We give words to those emotions, which is helpful for us to relate to them. But before there are words, there's just energy, and a particular kind of energy. That's the internal world's way of communicating. Then there's story, memories. The internal world communicates with memory. And in the internal world, there is a lot of space, but there's only a little bit of space that is lit up. And so there's so much more that to know than we can know in any particular moment in time. And so this practice, learning to listen to our internal world, you don't have to be relaxed, but see if you can kind of step back from my voice, not be pulled into it or follow it. That would be a part doing that. Just step back from my voice and let it be more peripheral. And as you do that, find your awareness that can move through your entire body. So you're not just looking through your eyes, you're not just hearing with your ears. You're not even just breathing through your nose. When you're in self awareness, your whole body receives and responds. And just see what that feels like. It's could be really subtle, could be nothing, could be really extraordinary. Whatever it is, just try and stay observant about it. And your internal world is always communicating. It's never not communicating. So, in right now, in this moment in time, as you're in your self awareness that can hear without ears, see without eyes, feel without touch. What are the sensations that are coming into your awareness right now? And you may have words for them, you may not have words for them. It's not important. Just notice where the sensation's coming from. Notice how intense it is. And you can ask any of these to not overwhelm you during this practice. Just kindly ask, please don't overwhelm me. I'm just learning. I'm just learning to listen. And then emotion, feeling. What is here? Where is it? How intense is it? And any stories, any memories, or any thoughts. The stories don't always have to be in the past. They could definitely be future stories. You might notice thoughts wanting you to be done, or firefighters taking you down to sleep, if this is uncomfortable for them. Many things could be happening. And that's exactly what we're noticing in this practice. There are so many possibilities for what's happening in our internal world at any moment in time. And then it shifts, and it continues to shift throughout the day and the week and our whole life. And unless we learn to tune into the language of the internal world, we're going to be limiting our understanding of ourselves and definitely of God. And so I encourage you, if this practice has been challenging, helpful in any way, return to it as often as you like. Even spending 15 seconds doing this throughout the day can really cultivate these listening skills. And these listening skills are absolutely essential to being able to, for your spirit and the Holy Spirit to help your parts navigate the adversity of life. I'm really grateful for your courage and your faith. I'm really grateful for unifying God that has brought us to this time and this place simultaneously. And I ask God to bless you and keep you and illuminate His presence within you so that you will see and not be afraid. Take care.